Hey everyone, one quick thing before we get started with the episode. I apparently did not set up recording to be done through my microphone for this episode, so my computer recorded my audio directly through its internal mic, and that is why I sound terrible for this episode. I'm really sorry about that. You can still hear me, but it sounds like I recorded from a telephone under the sea. Again, very sorry. Nothing much that I can do with that editing wise. Enjoy the show? Let's be real. We all need to take a break from alcohol. Luckily, Athletic Brewing offers award-winning, great-tasting NA beers for any occasion. Take a break from alcohol with something that tastes great, from their easy-drinking Athletic Light to something a bit more hoppy with Free Wave, or even something dark and bold like All Out. Try Athletic Brewing today by going to unitedwedrink.com/athletic and enjoy free shipping on all orders over $50. That's unitedwedrink.com/athletic. Athletic Brewing, beer fit for all times. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour, more like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Welcome back to another new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and with me, as always, are the gentlemen and scholars, Kevin Abbott and Tim Johnson.
Hello.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I decided not to do any weird things there.
The best thing to do when you decide not to do a specific open is to point out how you didn't do that. I think that is just podcasting 101. It's kind of like when you make a joke and you explain it. You just gotta.
In case you haven't noticed, like my internal monologues are not internal. They're always being spoken out loud. They're very much external, if you will.
External monologues.
Yeah, I can't tell if that makes you on the spectrum or just lazy.
We'll go with the second one because there's been plenty of time to diagnose me on the spectrum in my 41 years of life, and that hasn't happened. So it is the second.
Well, you'd be surprised. My wonderful wife, she works in the on the autism field, and she's diagnosed people in their 70s. So there's still time, Mike.
Okay, I got something to work towards.
Yeah, I was gonna say I knew someone who got diagnosed when they were 50. So
perfect. So
just
to give you something to look forward to.
I'm not sure what we're doing here, but.
We're self-diagnosing me, right? That's what's going on.
Oh, there's so many other diagnoses that you would have, Mike. Let's not go down there. Let's not do that.
That is for the Patreon that doesn't exist.
Did you say diagnoses?
Diagnosis?
Isn't it just diagnoses?
What's that?
Isn't it just diagnoses?
Yes, probably.
Okay.
This is the important thing. Add an extra syllable to anything. And unless you know the word specifically, which I would look like an idiot, the other people think, oh, that guy must sound smart. Yeah, he added an extra syllable.
We're getting into the grammar section of the podcast here. It's always a riveting time. Tim, this is actually an interesting episode for you because it is your first episode being employed not in the beer or alcohol industry any longer.
Yeah. I decided to get out, and today was actually literally my first day. Obviously, I'm still going to as you know, Kevin said last time, keep my finger on the pulse of the beverage industry, but it was time for a change just for my physical well-being and my mental well-being and my financial well-being. Um, yeah, and so I am now a project manager at a large-scale commercial sign company.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
The two best days in the life of a brewer: the day that you become a brewer and the day you get out of the brewing industry. Right? I think that's what they
That
say
is
about boats, and that's what they say about breweries.
no, I think that is absolutely true. I enjoyed basically a decade in the industry, but it wasn't a sustainable thing for me to retire on. I know very few people have been able to make it to retirement, and even then, they're either married to someone wealthy or they're um, uh, living somewhere tiny. But no, it was time. But I'm still eager to talk about beer. And yeah, I mean, I think we were all talking about beer before any of us got into the industry.
Yeah, I mean, this podcast originated way back in the day before I was working in the industry. My co-host at the time, Phil, was not yet in the industry, and
Did you guys really start it before both of you before Phil got the job with Cigar City the original time?
I'm 98% sure that we were both not in the industry yet when
Hmm.
we started the podcast.
That's back when you
He
were
will
just
he will text us
michaelofbeer.com.
and let us know. I think I feel like it was shortly after we started that he started working for Cigar City, I think. But yeah, Phil can confirm or deny that later on, and we'll not relay that message on the next podcast. Um, Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing just lovely. I took the family. We went to Disney over the weekend. Well, depending on when you're hearing this, I mean, we're recording on a Wednesday night, so it was the last weekend, and had a good time. It was hot. It was fun. It was exhausting, and it's so wonderful when you go on a vacation and then you can't wait to get back home because then you look at your home with fresh eyes. It's like, oh, this crappy place that I'm at every day. Oh, this is the greatest place I've ever been. Oh, my bed's here. Aha, I don't need anything else for the rest of my life. So I've rediscovered the joys of home, and we went from miserable heat to just being poured on rain for the past several days, and that's my life right now, and Mike's life, I'm guessing too.
Yes, we are becoming the lost city of Atlantis as we speak. Actually, I think that there's a little break in it going on right now by my house, but yeah, it's been almost consistent rain all day.
A couple
Uh,
days in a row, we've had another.
yeah,
My
yesterday
mother,
we didn't get as much as we did today.
yeah, no, today was pretty consistent. My mother called me yesterday, I think it was, and was like worried about me. She still doesn't really know where I live in
She,
Florida.
she got
If
short
she
geography.
if she hears anything happened in Florida, she just assumes it's happening to me. I think my mother thinks that Florida is like the size of Detroit, like a geographical kind of area. And I try to explain to her, I live in South Florida. It's start your finger at Fort Lauderdale and go up an inch, and that's where I live. But I mean, the fact that she cares, that's all that really matters, right?
I am betting as your father is listening to this right now, he is typing out a comment on YouTube in response to you talking about your mother.
Certainly.
But hi, Jim. Um, Kevin, what are you drinking?
I am drinking West Coast Renaissance, which is the brand new triple IPA from Barrel of Monks Brewing. It's a West Coast IPA. It's got a lot of bitterness to it. It's pretty good. I will honestly say it's not my favorite IPA that we've ever done, but it's not as good as like Verdant Embrace or Simulated Summer. I'm enjoying it. It's a solid beer, and I'm happy that we did it. I've been wanting to do like a big West Coast IPA for a long time, and this is what Ralph came up with.
What's the IBUs?
I haven't known the IBUs on one of our beers since 2007.
A real person who cared about West Coast IPAs would know.
Okay, 187 theoretical IBUs, Mike.
Yeah, I was gonna say, considering that whatever a brewer puts on the can is probably not anywhere near to be what it would be measured.
So you guys, Mike, you probably know this, but Tim, so when we opened Barrel of Monks, one of my partners, Matt, who just always likes to buy toys, he bought a mass spectrometer.
Mhm.
And we were gonna go, we're gonna test all our beers for alcohol and IBUs and all this stuff. It's been sitting in our lab for 10 years. It's never once been used. It's just there. It wasn't cheap, I'm
I was gonna
sure.
say that's an expensive piece of equipment to not
Yep.
get up and running.
It's just there. I mean, apparently it takes a lot of like different, I think they're assays or something else to run those. I'm not
Mhm.
a scientist, in case you haven't noticed. I'm not really even much of a brewer, well, much of anything. But yeah, it takes a lot of work and time to go into doing and running those tests. So we just never really did it because it didn't really matter, quite honestly. We thought it was going to matter a lot more than it did. And when we realized that like there's an alcohol range on every beer and no one cares about IBUs, it was like, I guess whatever Beersmith says is going to be just fine.
We had a mass spec briefly at Badger Hill through our alt prop with Finnegan's, and it got used some, but it didn't necessarily get used consistently. And not to say you need to test every single beer, every single time, every single thing, but it was just so kind of random that I don't know that it was necessarily beneficial in any way, shape, or form.
Thing.
What's that, Mike?
How big is this thing?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I was
so
gonna say, think of like an
voguing,
old,
guys.
think of like an old school desktop computer.
okay, so it's
Roughly.
because what I was just thinking is like, why don't you just sell it?
Because it's hard to find someone who wants to buy that thing.
Because
I
then
was
we
I was
wouldn't
wondering,
have
like,
it.
is it a pain in the ass to ship somewhere? But if it's that size, like, it can't be that hard to ship.
Because then we wouldn't have it. I mean, why do you think we keep most things at Barrel of Monks Brewing? Because then we wouldn't have them. If like, it's the classic example of walking up and going, "Hey, are we ever going to use this ever again?" No. Can I get rid of it? Absolutely not. What if we need it? Like that is basically most of what I go through trying to because we're going into full-time canning. And I have a canning line coming that we got from Melvin Brewing that we purchased, and we're gonna have to decommission our bottling line, commission a canning line. So I need space. And going through all the stuff, we've been holding on to those Cornelius kegs now for 8 years after we ever used one of them. I think we can probably get rid of those, and I have to have very serious conversations with people that work with me and partners and pry them out of their cold dead hands because there's always that possibility that we're going to open up an old school soda company and we need those 8 Cornelius kegs in order to function.
The owner of Dash Fire had this big plywood crate the size of like a Gaylord, filled with stuff from a 2011 event. So it's all dated 2011 and everything like that. I couldn't throw it out because 11's his favorite number.
And for real, that is the reason.
And so it took up an entire pallet location.
I have in my brewery a pallet spot taken up with tiles from the opening from the construction of the brewery. Now, anyone that knows this stuff, if a tile cracks, you can usually, we have like the tile floors inside the tap room, for instance. You can go in there with like a Dremel and you can cut out a tile and you can replace a tile. So it's a good idea to keep a box. There's 12 tiles or whatever it is in there. And over the years, you might have one break here or there. I have 17 boxes of tiles. I could redo most of the brewery. And we've never once chipped one. It's been 10 years. And you'd think I can get rid of those tiles. Those tiles will outlive me. They will be there when at the heat death of the universe inside that edifice, just in case the whatever species that rises up needs them to redo the bar at Barrel of Monks Brewing.
When Dashfire dug their trench drains, and there were these old bricks underneath because it's like a historic building or whatever. There were these old bricks that they took out, and they're just stacked somewhere because someone went, no, they're historic. We can't get rid of them. Like, but what are we going to do with them?
Okay, I think we had a topic for this show, but it's now just become hoarders. This is called brewery hoarders, and we can just come up with examples forever.
I wanted to know which I feel like probably all of us have, even in our own houses. Do you have at least 10 packets of plasticware that you've gotten from restaurants through takeout and just thrown them into your junk drawer because you might need them at some point?
I use them. I keep them, but I use them.
That's good.
That makes one of us.
No, because my ex-wife would always lose. She'd always take like a spoon from home for lunch, and then it would never make it back. And so, like, we had a complete set of silverware at one point, and then it dwindled down. And so, ever since then, lunch is always plasticware.
There you go.
And then I also always keep.
Consistent.
I don't keep ketchup packets because I don't like ketchup, but like hot sauce packets.
What about the little salts and peppers?
No, not the little salts and peppers. I don't ever really use those. But things like hot sauce packets, maybe a couple other things. Arby's
Soy sauce?
actually.
Soy sauce.
Duck sauce.
Occasionally, yeah. But for me, they're good for like camping and backpacking trips. I don't have to pack an entire thing of hot sauce when I know that, on my third day of backpacking, I'm tired of just eating bland, whatever, and I want to kick it up.
So what I heard there is I never have to keep hot sauce packages because I will never go camping or hiking because I don't like being outdoors. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Kevin, because I thought I was like that too, until I spent some time doing those things not in Florida. Because believe it or not, other parts of the country aren't as stupidly hot and humid for as long, and they're actually nice to be outside.
We'll take you we'll take you up to the Boundary Waters sometime, guys. I think you'll like it up there.
Hiking in Florida is just walking down the street. Right?
Yeah,
It's just walking on concrete on a flat plane for several miles. That's not really that exciting. Look, another plaza. That's hiking in Florida.
You guys have gators. We have bears and moose.
Meese. Tim, what are you drinking?
I am. We've been at this.
Have we done half the show already?
I think we have. Hey, sometimes I am drinking Super Deluxe by Modest, a local brewery down close to Target Field. My buddy Chad is a bartender there. They call it a Japanese style lager. It's a rice lager. I don't know that anything else makes it particularly Japanese, but everyone seemed to be called. It's kind of like everyone was calling some of these things Mexican lagers for the longest time, and you're like, there's nothing particularly Mexican about this. Nothing particularly Japanese about this. It's made with rice.
I remember a couple of years ago arguments on Twitter that Mexican lager isn't even a thing. It's like the lagers that are made by Mexicans are not necessarily a distinctive thing to their area.
Well, no, because all the German immigrants are the ones that really introduced brewing beer to Mexico. That's why like most of those are Vienna lagers.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to make a Japanese style lager at Barrel of Monks and call it nothing particularly Japanese about this beer. And that would be that's another. Every episode, I feel like we come up with one great name for a
Yeah.
beer. Barrel of
I was
Cucks. We
going with,
got.
I think this beer is turning Japanese.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just Pilsner Rice and Sriracha Ace. I don't see what makes that Japanese, but whatever.
Well, I'm drinking some Bee Squeeze from a little brewery called Copper Point that I happen to be employed by. This is our blonde ale with local honey and orange peel. Really good for this time of year, and we're selling a stupid amount of this. I feel like this is going to be our number one beer by the end of the year.
Cool.
Yeah, the trends are looking great right now. Also have a little bit of bourbon here, but I guess we should get into the topic. And I gotta say, guys, I've been looking forward to talking about this topic for a long time. I didn't ever think that we would have an episode where we talked about one of my favorite short-lived PBS docuseries, Environment. It's such a great show. It goes into all these really interesting stories. Wait, you guys are looking at me weird. Is this not what we're talking about?
No, this is what we're talking about.
Okay, sweet.
I got
So-
confused for a second that you're like the connection.
I
to
thought you were
PBS
doing a
before.
bit. I thought you were doing a bit. I don't,
Yeah,
did.
yeah, you did kind of have your smart ass eyes.
My
I would-
smart ass eyes.
I would have said a shit-eating grin, but smart ass eyes. Let's dump on Mike right now. What else about him?
Come on,
This-
Brain. Got
Hey,
dumb
good,
hair.
good. It's his turn.
What little hair I have left is dumb.
But I think
Brain.
earlier on, I'm glad I didn't do this. But when you were talking about like not being sustainable to be in the industry long term, I was like, sustainability, and then we run right into our topic. But I'm glad we ended up talking
you
about.
also brought up us approaching like the world's end, and that palette of tiles will be there at the end of the world. I was like, this could be a segue too.
This is what we do. We go back and say all the segues we could have done to show that we are really quick on our feet, and we can come up with clever things to say 15 minutes later. Once again, this is great podcasting, guys. Describe all the things we could have said. This is take 4 of this podcast, by the way. We keep doing this over and over again until we get it right.
This is why people come and listen, is because we don't have like those quick cuts and all that over editing shit. Like, if you want to listen, go listen to this is not that. We are the anti-Roman Mars of podcasting. I still love that show, but we are very anti like that show.
We're not weighed down by any talent or knowledge or ability. We just
Expectations,
we
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nothing. Sustainability.
So yeah, we're going to talk about. I should have looked up sustainability instead of trying to come up with a bit for environment wasn't easy. But yeah, so like the brewing industry, I feel like this is something that is not talked about by people other than probably some of the bigger boys on sustainability within the industry, because our industry is really bad for the environment on the surface. Kevin, like I should have written this down. You sent out a text message before of just like a laundry list of things that we do in this industry and the stuff that's adjacent, sort of like with our vendors, like malt production and all of that is really bad for our environment. Do you have any of that there so that I don't have to try to paraphrase this?
Of course I do, Mike. I'm always prepared. Yeah, we were talking back and forth, and this is the thing, and just to echo what you said, our industry literally creates CO2, right? Like the thing that is ruining the environment. Now, I will say this: I did look up some numbers. I didn't write down the numbers, but because the brewing industry comparatively is so much smaller than like the cattle industry, and it's really it's really a small amount of the big picture. It's not like if put it this way, if we're trying to get to cut down CO2 emissions by a serious amount, getting rid of all beer is not really going to make much of a dent in what we're talking about.
Yep.
Okay. But we are creating CO2. And the things that we're buying and the shipping and so many other aspects of it are all creating more greenhouse gases. So it's something that we should be responsible for. And I also find it interesting that we have so many breweries, the Sierra Nevadas of the world, New Belgium come to mind, where, they're looking to go like carbon neutral inside their breweries and building. There's a lot of thoughtfulness in the beer industry. There's a lot of people that really care about the environment in the beer industry, but probably on that like one level below that, I think kind of all the rules go out the window and no one's really paying attention to what they're doing to the environment.
I
Okay.
mean, I have heard of some smaller breweries that are working on CO2 capture. Which again, like you said,
So expensive.
not really making a dent, so expensive, but I think sometimes things like that can help start the conversation or start people getting into that a little bit more. But again, the expense and the fact that it's not really making much of a difference, it's not something that a lot of people are getting into. But there have been some. I so one I was just reading about last month, and I don't remember what it was. It was a bunch of engineers, and so their idea was, finding ways to recapture CO2. I think also just so that it could be used in other places around the brewery, not just right, because not only are we creating CO2, we're buying CO2.
Yeah.
Well, good solutions for industry have to be beneficial to the industry too. Don't get me wrong. There are industries that would say, okay, or businesses that would say, well, this costs us a little bit more money, but we're going to do it because it's good for the environment. Those choices are made. They're just much less of those choices being made than, oh, we can put CO2 capture in. I mean, the only brewery I think I've ever been to that has a CO2 capture system is the Yingling Brewery in Tampa. I'm fairly certain they do. They're just a massive I mean, it's a massive brewery. It's a macro style brewery that they're in. And so but they're doing that. Maybe they have some environmental bent. I have no idea. But the main thing is they don't have to purchase CO2, or they have to purchase much less CO2 because they can feed it back into their beers and carbonate their beers. So that's the best case scenario. The industry at our side of the industry, the size of brewery that we've worked at, the people on this little call, this little podcast that we love, it's so expensive. So many of the technologies that can long term be profitable for your brewery and benefit the environment are prohibitively expensive to the point where we've looked at CO2 capture. We'd have to make 30% more beer every single year for the next 25 years to break even. Right? So if we were to go with a CO2 capture, and this is a couple years ago, I looked into this, it would 100% be because the people involved in the brewery care and want to help the environment. That would be it. It's not going to help your bottom line. And there's other things to do with water and just things that have nothing to do with sustainability. So many technologies that they're not touchable by a 2,000 barrel brewery because it's never going to be financially feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just think it's, well, why can't you just close your blow off and hook that up to a corny keg and capture all of that? But I mean, I know, seriously, like I've heard people like suggest things like that, and I'm like, well, there's filtration, there's a lot of other things coming off of that blow off that aren't just CO2, and there's a whole other side of that even to like DIY shitty homebrew style build something on a homebrew level, you probably actually could do something as simple as that. But is that really a quality or a sustainable thing? No, certainly not at all. And I think people don't understand that technology is a lot more involved than.
Yeah, the fact that like there are so many breweries that would have to have this this balance as to weighing is being good and doing the right thing or remaining profitable and staying open. Like that's a super tough decision to just put someone on the spot and be like, you need to do better. Like, well, if doing better means I close, am I doing better? I have actually a quick question. And what is the CO2 capture? Like Kevin, you said you've been proposed. I've never had anyone come in and talk to me about this when I worked inside the brewery. So the CO2 capture process, like, what is that, and what is the purpose of capturing it? Where does it go if you're not reusing it?
So it goes to Narnia for a short time, and it's held there
Does the lion eat it?
by Mr. Tumnus, actually. And I don't know. Tim might actually know about this because he seems like the science guy here. My looking into it was literally being proposed a number of what it would cost to put something like that in and just running the financials. So I do know that filtration is involved. I do know that you have to have storage tanks, just like you're storing CO2 from the company you get it from. And there's, temperature controls. There's a lot of things that go into it that I understand just at a very, very base level, but I don't really know. Tim, do you?
No, I mean, I've never seen a complete solution. But yeah, I mean, it is literally just, I was reading because I think Sierra Nevada and Chico does CO2 recapture to some extent. But it works better on a larger scale, right? Well, that's the other thing, right? Like the CO2 recapture you get off of, 5-10 barrel tanks isn't going to even be reasonably done. And you're gonna have to run more lines, and you're gonna have to have all of that. Yeah, I don't entirely know, but again, you're not getting necessarily that that pure food grade CO2 that we like to have, or lab grade, or things like that. Because when you buy your CO2, you want a certain level of purity, and I don't know that what all goes into the purification process.
So, one of the things that everyone's going to go to CO2 when they're talking about this, when the environment, because CO2 is such an important part of the greenhouse effect and greenhouse gases and what we're talking about. When we're talking about getting to, a 2 degrees Celsius warming over X amount of time that we've probably already exceeded. That's what everything's talking about. But the acidification of the oceans, that contributes to CO2, wastewater, the water usage that breweries use. I mean, you see different numbers kind of bandied about, but just looking at something, I don't. One thing I'm not good at is reciting accurate statistics. So take nothing that I say at face value. Go to Google. Don't take that at face value because that's bullshit too. But if you do some real research, you'll see it. But they talk about, like, making almonds or raising almonds, growing almonds. That's the word. Growing almonds costs so much water, and it's a water heavy crop, and people get down on that. When you are making beer, you're at sometimes going like 10 times the amount of water goes into making a gallon of beer. And that's just not like the water for producing it, but cleaning the tank, rinsing your tank, doing, acid washes, caustic washes, parasitic rinses. It's a water heavy industry. And, you just have to look at the water going down the drain one day at Barrel of Monks, which is a tiny, tiny brewery in the grand scheme of things, to see the water usage that we have. In Florida, we don't really have water problems. I mean, we're not talking about water conservation. We're not being told not to run sprinklers, things of that nature. But how about California,
Yeah.
which is a massive brewing state that has serious issues of just running out of water, period. And you've got breweries just sucking up water. They're drinking other people's milkshake, right? they're
Yeah. Well,
taking the water to make beer.
because not only is it all the cleaning, all the just the usage of water in the first place, it's you have to control your effluent that you put down your drain, so that requires more water a lot of times to actually make sure that you're at the right percentage. And sometimes that just sometimes you can get away with it by just paying more, which isn't really offsetting anything. But the reality is yeah, it's a very water intensive process, and that becomes a real challenge. I had something else I was going to say about water, and I totally forgot what it was.
Well, I'll jump in there. I was actually probably one of the worst at this. Is when I worked on the brewing floor, I never trusted that things were rinsed properly. So I'd rinse everything I'd rinse my fermenter 5 times. Then I'd go, this is good. Better do it 5 more times just to make sure. I mean, the amount of water waste that I've had my hand in is massive. The other thing I think you were alluding to, like with wastewater, I remember before Due South opened, when it was just a gleam in Mike Hawker's eye. I'm sorry, the place that we don't ever mention. I don't know if we're still doing that, but the place Mike and I worked. One of the guys who taught me home brewing, and I can't remember his name now, which just means senility is kicking in. But what's that?
Jim Bass?
No. This is one of the guys who taught me home, like Chris Harris and his buddy from the Palm Beach Draftsman. Maybe his name was Craig. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But he was a home brewer that was very knowledgeable, very science-based, brilliant dude. And Mike Hawker was at Coffee District during one of our homebrew classes. And this dude cornered Mike and talked to him for 45 minutes on his wastewater, because he was planning on opening a brewery, and he had all these systems in place to like filter out wastewater and work on the acidification of it, and all these different processes to do what I guess technically you're supposed to do. And I ended up talking to Mike afterwards, like, I ain't gonna do shit with them. Just put it on the fucking drain. Like you're thinking too much about fucking wastewater. You should be thinking about making beer. And I thought it was like this the perfect microcosm, especially looking back at it now, of like every brewery. Like, we ain't gonna worry about that. That's someone else's problem. We're not gonna think about. We got enough things to worry about. The margins are slim. I'm gonna put all that shit down the drain, and if it ever comes back to haunt me, I'll deal with it on the back end. How many people opening a 2,000 barrel brewery that you know of are sitting there going, man, we really got to figure out this whole wastewater thing? It's just not on anyone's radar.
I heard about some breweries, especially in the infancy of like craft brewing, who when they were signing their leases got like water included or like split with some of their landlords.
Yeah.
With the landlord not having a single clue how much water was going to get used, and then like after the first couple months being like, whoa, you look at all this, like it's in the lease that you're gonna take care of it, or you're taking care of half of it, or something like that. And some of those places probably lucked out a hell of a lot, at least on the expense of it. But yeah, it went to show like how much water actually gets used.
There is a brewery in Northeast Minneapolis where the former head brewer, he went to school for like water resources, and he was a brewer at this place, and then he left recently, maybe a year ago, to go back in and be a water resource specialist for the Three Rivers Park district. And I've always wanted to ask him his opinion, like sit down over a beer and really talk to him. Boy, had I been thinking, I would have invited him on. But
good news for this.
yeah. I've always kind of wondered what his thought was, because he knows the impact of not just severe water usage, but again, effluent back into the system. And, we all, in the land of 10,000 lakes, we're all very, I wouldn't say we all are, but a lot of us are very, very conscious about what chemicals we use on our lawn and what other things are going on, because all those things that are washing in are going to the lakes, and they're impacting the biodiversity there, and they're already causing changes. And so we do worry very much about those things, but I don't think I don't think your average person, even, with, a week on Google, could get to the point to really understand what that impact is.
And go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead.
It's worrisome thinking about the cleaning chemicals and the things that we use, because some of them are scary. I mean, nitric acid is freaking scary to work with. You get
Mhm.
nitric acid on you, that can really fuck you up. So the chemicals we work with in their concentrated forms can be very dangerous. We have to have safety protocols in place. And it stands to reason that you immediately go, that going into the water system is going to be terrifying. It's going to ruin the world. We also can be a little bit alarmist in that way, because chemicals, everything is chemicals. Water is a chemical, right? So we also don't want to be in the situation where, like, oh, all these things are going to destroy the lands around, or they're going to destroy the water system. But we have to be cognizant of, these are things that would not naturally be going into this system if they were not concentrated and put in giant blue drums at our brewery. And what are those long-term effects? I haven't seen that. I haven't seen any studies on that. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
But again, we're having to dilute them down to safety levels in the first place. That's, again, just a lot more water usage.
Mhm. The usage of water is a thing that kind of disturbs me maybe the most, because you look at places that are water rich and you go, okay, it's not a big deal. But there are so many places all over the world that are getting to a point where they have so little drinking water that it is obscene. And
the
that
RLC
problem's
is
not going
shrinking
away.
vastly.
Say that again.
The RLC is shrinking vastly. It's almost not a thing anymore. Well, so
One quick thing I just want to say is, like, Kevin mentioned this a bit ago, and I didn't want to interrupt him. Is actually, Kevin, we are in a drought. Our county, and has been for, like you were saying, that we have no problems with water here. Like, my city has been saying for a while that people should be conserving water, and I was just looking at the actual drought maps from the government, and like Boca is much higher. You're in severe drought standing, and we even down here, we're going through like a monsoon for the last 2 days, and we're still technically in a drought because of how dry it's been.
I mean,
That's a good point, Mike.
We had one of the lightest snowfalls for a season, that certainly the least amount since I've been in here, but it was for a while there was a record, and then we finally got one more snow at the end of the season. I think it maybe didn't do the record, but it was so
feel
little.
Like you didn't complain about snow that much this winter.
Oh, I didn't. I literally shoveled once, and it wasn't that bad. It was warm, so even when we did get a big snowfall, it melted quickly. But most of the time, it was a very dry winter, and I don't think people understand that snow melting goes back into the system, right? So it's not like, people don't think of it like rain. I know it, like, you would think that that's obvious to people, but I don't think people, when they think about drought, they think about summertime. They don't think about winter drought in a place like this. And so it put us behind the 8 ball on so many things. Now we have had a much wetter spring, and that's helped. But I mean, we're still dealing with wildfires up in northern Minnesota. There's still plenty of days where it was hazy and smelled like smoke down here in the cities, because it blows all the way down. And so, yeah, it becomes a big issue.
And that's, I'm really glad, Mike, that you mentioned that, and Tim, you mentioned that, because so much of this comes down to, what are you exposed to and what are you being told?
Yeah.
Because no one's told me to consume less water. I haven't seen that, but I mean, I don't watch the local news if that's where that information is being disseminated. Maybe on my online presence, I'm not seeing that. I knew it was dry. I mean, I have a little man-made lake behind my house. That thing is as low as I've ever seen it. But I'm not connecting those two things one to one that we're in a drought because the water still pours out of the faucet and no one's telling me to take showers every other day. And so much of that is where the political landscape is and who's willing to tell you that there's a problem or what have you. But listen, there's no doubt that right now, that 10 years ago, but right now, and that for the next 50 years, 100 years, we're going to have to think about these things as a species and prioritize where the water goes. And I don't see a lot of breweries going, you know what? I'll take it on the chin. I'll close. I only put 2.5 million into this thing. I'll go sell insurance, close my brewery down because it uses too much water. It's probably not going to happen. But I think as an industry, we should be more conscious about what we do and maybe think less about just, at my house, I just use water for everything. Like, oh, that's a problem. There's a spider web. I'll just shoot it down with some water. I could get a broom, but I got the hose in my hand and it's so much more fun that way.
I've always wanted to have a trench drain in my kitchen because it would make cleaning up my kitchen a whole lot easier.
Right. Yeah. There is. I saw this on Facebook or something. It was like a Japanese outdoor communal community toilet, and whenever anyone left it, the entire thing would flood with water and like disinfect and sanitize everything. And I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. We need this everywhere, but the amount of resources is insane. So I do think we need to take the time to be more conscious and just preserve a little bit.
It can be tough,
would be really helpful.
But like you said, you don't watch the news. Like, I am subscribed to newsletters from my city. Two different ones. One is a sustainability newsletter that they send out every other week, and I'm looking through them right now, and in the last two, there is nothing about conserving water. But if you look it up on like the Palm Beach Post or local newspaper, there's stuff about it. It's like the mayor's office isn't even saying anything. They're talking about, oh, you can get high efficiency toilets and you can do something, but nothing about, we are in a drought. You should conserve water. It's so tough when your own government isn't even telling you what you need to do.
They don't want to say unpopular things. I mean, that's just the way it works. No one wants to, because what they'll say is, the voters will go, that mayor, he's probably the one that caused this. I mean,
yeah. No, it reminds me, how many times I've seen someone wearing a shirt that says "conserve water, drink beer," and every time I see that, I laugh because I'm like, you're doing literally the opposite.
But it's so clever. It's such a clever thing. Come on, Tim.
Well, so there's another thing.
Franklin said that too.
There's it's always Benjamin Franklin, right? There's another thing that I want to talk about. So there's a brewery up north. They're big into sustainability and they're big into the boundary waters, right? And so there's been a bunch of people that have been really working to try to save the boundary waters because it's also a big place for mining. So we have a very large taconite mining industry in Minnesota. Taconite is iron ore. Iron is a component of steel. And so you have, these breweries that are the largest consumers of stainless steel wanting to stop mining. It's like, we can't, if you can't mine, you can't get the stainless steel. But you're trying to use the beer to, like, it just became kind of ironic to me that it's like, yeah, let's go ahead and oppose mining. But then, we've run into steel shortages and things like that.
And it's killed people.
Yeah.
I mean, not killed people, but financially, it's really, really tough when the steel prices go up. It's really, really cumbersome for any kind of growth or anything.
And I'm not saying I'm pro taconite mining in the boundary waters. Now that I'm out of the brewing industry, I'd say forget the stainless steel tanks. But it just becomes sort of this paradox, I guess. They're good guys, and I trust where they're at, and I know they work hard on sustainability, and I know they're probably not buying a whole lot more stainless. But it just becomes this big irony to me that we're such a big consumer of stainless steel, and that stainless steel is impacting the environment as well. And that's one thing.
And for me, Tim just froze.
Yeah, he just froze for me too.
Okay,
Nothing
good.
from you guys?
He's back.
He's back.
Oh, you guys froze on me.
Oh, you
Oh.
froze for both of us.
We're not going to play this
won.
game.
We won.
We're not going to play you said, I said, he said, she said.
Okay,
None of that.
where did I cut off?
Okay, you started by telling us what you were going to drink, what you were drinking tonight. No, I think we got most of what you were talking about. I think that it just goes to show you, Tim, everything is so connected and there are no easy answers to all this. I mean, I don't think that when we propose talking about this, we're going to be like, hey, United We Drink is going to solve all this. We have very little to add.
It's always sunny. We are not solving the climate crisis.
But I think just to look at this, but just giving those examples like you did, I think it's valuable because a lot of people that listen to this podcast are in the industry, and some people that are fans of beer, just to think a little bit more about where your stuff comes from, I think is really important. But the interconnected nature of everything that is done, it's like, well, we need to stop doing that. Well, then this price will go up. Well, I can't have the price go up. So we have to do that, but then we have to not do that. That's all also comes directly from It's Always Sunny when they were talking about letting the crazies loose from the insane asylums. If not, they're going to do the taxes. Anyway, I'm not going to do this whole bit, but everything is interconnected. Everything we do has impacts, and you can take it directly.
Like the good place. This is how, like, you think everything that you're doing is good, but there's something minute down the road that is being influenced negatively in all of it, that is just coming up negative for you, despite every attempt at doing good. You are somehow still supporting negative things, and it's just almost impossible.
That is not depressing in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Well, you can't be perfect, and I think a little bit more consciousness goes a long way.
Yeah.
But realizing that the grain that we get, where is that farmland coming from? What else could they be producing in areas that we have food shortages? And they're making a shit ton of barley. Now, barley is a staple crop. It can be used to make things that actually are valuable to people, like bread that can give them calories and sustenance. But how much of it is going towards making beer? Could that farmland, and I don't know farming, but could that farmland be used for something else that is more nutritious and better for people? There's so many threads you can pull in this conversation that really unravel a lot of different things.
Yeah.
We're seeing crops for hops being cut down significantly every year. And I'm kind of curious as with these hop growers, like, what are they doing in place of them? Like, I can't assume that they're necessarily replacing them with a specific, a different type of hop, or maybe they're doing some experimental stuff with it. But like, even like hype hops are having their crops cut down. Citra was cut down significantly over the last year.
I mean, some of that is just due to lower yields, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest problems with barley production. It hasn't been that they're necessarily producing less; they're not planting less acres. They're getting lower yield, and
hop farmers are planting less too.
What's that?
Hop farmers are planting less too.
See, some of them are because they're not getting the bang for their buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, then that doesn't mean that they're supplying it with anything else. I now want to know,
like, what are you using that land for then? Like, are you just doing experiment? Are you just replacing with a different variety, or are you getting into trying something different that could be helpful to a different segment of?
They're probably renting out that land. To be honest with you, the way farming. So I grew up in Iowa. My dad has his master's in agronomy. They still own the family farm. You either get bigger or you get smaller. doesn't mean you're changing something in. I'm willing to bet they're renting out that land to something else. But I'm willing to bet they're not hop growers aren't getting into another industry. I'm willing to bet that land is worth more than trying to get into another industry. Land is
you're probably very right there.
Land is I kick myself all the time. I wish I would have bought land when I was like 24. Because I would be a wealthy man right now. Because that's the one thing that never gets cheaper. You know?
Yeah.
Now, like I was talking to my dad a couple weeks ago. I went down to Iowa and I was mentioning how I was asking how planting season went in Iowa because he's retired, but he still gets all the farmers magazines and he still goes to meetings and all that stuff because that's been his only hobby for his entire life. And I was talking about, some of the places where I was still seeing people planting on the way down. Now they had a really nice spring in a lot of the state. Planting didn't really get delayed, and I asked him, and he's like, "Yeah, because some guys just bought too much land, thinking that it was going to be profitable to farm on when they really should just be renting that out."
And that's interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, all of that. I mean, farming is also has a major impact on the environment. So the grain, and then we're still importing grain and importing hops.
Yeah,
that doesn't like vaporize and then rematerialize over here. There's a huge transportation issue with that.
I wanted to talk about that, and I think that's I'm glad you mentioned it because I started, and once again, I have to say this and kind of put the caveat of how small we are. Us, particularly in my brewery, not to minimize what we're doing, but just to contextualize this. But when we opened, we prided ourselves that we only got European malts and hops. We only got the ingredients that came from the areas that Belgian beer was made from. And that was so important for us because we're making Belgian style ales. So we need to use the exact ingredients, the exact things that they would be making. And that was what we hung our hat on. And people would say, well, you can get just as good a malt here in America. We weren't saying you couldn't. Every malt house is different, by the way. So don't just think one for one. Like I can get raw and it's going to be the same as Wireman, right? There's differences there. There's some terroir to speak of when it comes to hops and things of that nature. But we hung our hat on that, and that wasn't good for the environment. That wasn't even good for our business bottom line. When we have done our IPAs and we do our American styles, we don't demand to use European malts and hops. That would not be right for the style. So we get cheaper malt from sources here in the US and Canada, and it's better for our bottom line, it's better for the environment, and it's right for the beer. I would like to replace more of my malts with stuff that's more local. But we decided not to do that for the time being. But what we hung our hat on and what we prided ourselves in was literally a bad thing for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, as the other thing that we haven't talked about is as climate change is happening, it's changing the growing regions that things grow well in.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's that continuous feedback loop of the more we hurt the environment, the more we have to change what we do. The more we change what we do, the more it hurts the environment. The exact same thing we've been talking about. But that's why grain yields have been bad, or the plumpness of the kernel has been down, or why a lot of those things have been an issue, is because climate change has affected different growing regions differently. We don't do a ton. We basically don't do any barley here in Minnesota, but North, South Dakota, yeah, they're doing barley. They're doing crops like that, and they've seen significant changes. And then also, North Dakota had the big oil boom, and that also affected things. But yeah, there's it's just one more of that kind of endless feedback loop of the more we hurt the environment, the more we have to change, and the more we change, the more we hurt the environment. It's frustrating. Again, no answer, but it's things that I think people need to think about.
It's easy to get the warm and fuzzies about the craft beer industry because we believe that the people that are doing it are not big business and they think about these kind of things. And the three of us are examples of people have been or are in the craft beer industry that care about these things.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean we're doing a lot about it, right?
I mean,
On a daily basis.
Anheuser-Busch sends PhD scientists to RAR like once a quarter. Molson Coors, I think it's maybe once or twice a year. But you know what they have? PhD scientists.
Yeah.
They are doing things about a lot of these things. So as much as we kind of rip on it as, they're big business, they're a problem. They also have multiple facilities across the country so that they're not having to ship things as far as they're having to do. We don't have that. I really wish, I guess that is all to say, I really wish the Brewers Association spent more time on this, right? They have a really good economist that can talk to people about how to run the business and the state of the industry and all those things. I don't really remember seeing a whole lot from the Brewers Association on any of that stuff.
I hate to be like this, but you know why? Because not enough of their members are asking for it.
You're not wrong, but boy, wouldn't it be great? Like I used to always say, you know why I get good grain from RAR? They're right down the road from me, but it's not that. I get good grain from RAR because Anheuser-Busch sent somebody to go check out that place. I have been over to RAR, I don't know, a dozen times. And I look at it and go, yep, that's malt. Like, like I don't know enough about that. And I could spend a lot of time studying it, but I'm never going to get a PhD in any of that stuff. I can think of maybe, I know Summit at one point employed PhDs. I don't know if they still do. I don't know anyone else that has one at this point.
But you're making a very good point about the fact that when we started this conversation, in some way, and I can't remember exactly what we were talking about because I don't really listen to you guys when you talk, but we were talking about
Grammar, and then we were talking about.
Thank you, Mike. Give me the minutes. What are the minutes on this episode? But we were talking about how like you when it's profitable for businesses, when they see that there can be profitability in sustainability, that's when it really kicks in, right? So it's rarely just an altruistic kind of thing for any business, let alone big business, small business, whatever it is, to just say, hey, we're going to do the right thing because we're going to do the right thing. So when these PhD students are being sent to these places, it's because they're looking for things, or looking to get the best deals, or looking to understand the product the most. And that's the best case scenario for everybody. When there's profitability and when that combines with sustainability to make a trickle down effect that affects all us little guys who don't have that ability to send somebody and learn more about this and understand wastewater and things of that nature. Hopefully we can piggyback on some of those things. And also, I think a good point you made, Tim, like maybe not demonize the big guys so much.
Yeah.
Maybe they're doing more than we're doing.
Well, and certainly for, your 2,000 barrel brewery, yeah, but if there's some sort of, I always really wish that maybe even individual states brewers associations would come together collectively and say, hey, I can't afford this, you can't afford this, but all of us collectively will benefit from this. We always talk in the brewing industry about how a rising tide lifts all ships, which, is bullshit in a lot of ways, but there still is a lot of collaboration, camaraderie, certainly more so than any other industry, more than the liquor industry, I'll tell you that. But you can still pool resources to focus on that thing, right? If there's an expert on a specific, because I mean, that's how we got things done with legal marijuana here. Is it wasn't that any one person had, a big say. It was that all of the breweries came together. Now it's because there was going to be profit there. But at the same time, it's like when you pool your resources, it's a whole hell of a lot better than when you're just depending on yourself. So when it comes time to like sustainability, I'd love to see states, brewers associations or guilds or whatever you're calling it in your state, focus more on that, and then you can start to then pair with another guild, and then you can pair with another thing, and then it can kind of grow. And I feel like when people, and this is not a judgment on you, but when it becomes gee, what can I do at 2,000? Well, you can bring it up the next time you're around a bunch of other brewers. You know what I mean? Like,
Tim, judge me. Just judge me.
And if your guild could then work with some of these companies that are like the CO2 capture companies and try to find ways, hey, could we get a price break if 10 of us sign up for this thing today? Like, what can you do to help us? Because this, I feel like Kevin set this up really well at the very beginning with talking about how really the brewing industry is such a small slice in the CO2 problem. But it comes down to like the people who are doing it are going to the lengths to pay the exorbitant amount of money to do the right thing. Look at it kind of beating your chest a little bit, but I think there's many of those people who are doing it because they genuinely believe, you know what, even if it's not up in the bucket, I'm doing it. And I think that's kind of thing. I think that is something certainly happen. Like, those who do stuff like that, I love to so like your new about as making your company, like, who puts so much effort into like one of my favorites, alligator. All of our favorites, they just how they have a machine that takes like fish rays and cardboard they have used through it comes the material that they use for their merch sales, mailing, packaging. It's just like they have put so much effort into sustainability up there, and it's like even if it isn't the biggest amount of change from all of those, like I think that it's still something awesome to strive for, just to know that you're doing something and trying to take care of this only fucking planet that we have available to us. Yeah, I commend people doing that, and I know why it's tough because of money, and I say that as someone who is not part of the money in the company that I work for. But yeah, I just thought that was a good place to somehow bring it back to.
It's well said, Mike. A little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone else want to chime in for a little last bit on this?
I feel like we've gone round and round. We've talked a lot of things. I also feel like we've barely scratched the surface on this.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would love to have your friend on to talk more about this, because
that'd be great.
And I felt like I was really quiet on this one because, like, as much as I adore the outdoors and I adore sustainability, it is something that I'm dumb about. Like, I look to experts and people who are more enthusiastic about it than me to learn from.
Well, I don't think anyone here is claiming I'm being an expert. I think, Tim, you have a lot of really great insights, and I really appreciate them. But we're people who have worked in the industry who have varying understandings of some of these processes, but we're conscious about them, and we're the kind of people who walk through a brewery and go, "That's probably not great,"
Yeah.
Like that's probably not a great process. I'm sure it could be better, but either A, I don't have the ability to stop it or do it differently, or B, if I did it differently, we'd have to turn the lights off and we all get to go home. I think Mike, you made that point earlier.
Yeah.
But if there were avenues that allowed us resources to help some of this out, like, talking about the Brewers Guilds and the associations, like you're saying, Tim, it would change things a lot. And hopefully we just, the people that are in the industry that listen to this are thinking about these things in a different way. That's the best thing we can do.
Yeah, I'm just glad we talked about it. I feel like it's something that has been kind of a giant elephant in the room.
They created a lot of CO2 too.
Mike just said, kill all the elephants. I'm just putting it out there. I don't agree with it. I was just at Animal Kingdom. I saw elephants. I'm not a fan, Mike.
Even his checks are made of ivory. Come on, Lisa. Would a poacher be someone who has a lot of ivory, or someone whose ivory supplies are limited?
Thank you. Not my fault that I have no reason to write checks anymore. Like these would all be gone if we still lived in the society we did 15, 20 years ago.
Evan, thank you for getting that reference.
Let's speaking of references, Kevin's dad very disappointed that he doesn't know what malto meal is from the last episode.
But he did get that Simpsons reference and will really, really enjoy it. So, it balances out. I think it's getting to a point where he's going to be like, Tim, he wants you to be his son, and he can just pass on me. You live closer. You're still in the Midwest. You know what malto meal is. You make Simpsons references. You're basically me, just a better version of me.
No, I get that.
I'll save it for after the show, but I want to talk about this. I saw this map about like who considers themselves Midwest, and it was insane. People who
it's everyone.
Yeah, practically. As long as you don't touch an ocean, people consider themselves Midwest.
I'm not that this is a reference at all of anything that's real, but
it's a great way to start a sentence.
Beer Advocate used to include Minnesota in Midwest, and then they moved us to Great Lakes. But we have way more similarities with like Iowa than we do with Ohio. It just seemed like a very weird switch to make just because we're on the largest Great Lake, but I don't know. I thought that was really dumb.
I didn't know that happened. That's kind of funny.
It's really dumb. I will say that as a native Iowan, more hogs are grown in Iowa than any other place in the world. More corn is grown in Iowa than any other place in the world. I think we're top 3 in chickens. We're top 3 in soybeans.
Brad.
I think we're about as Midwest could possibly. There was a Broadway musical based on our state fair. I feel like like we're probably about.
So I'm sure we want to go into last calls. There's a Facebook page. It's called Midwest versus Everybody. It's a lot of fun. So anyone who is from the Midwest or wants to see some really nice little picture graphics that are absolutely hilarious and fun, just check that out. And it always makes perfect sense to me.
Is that your last call?
No, but
okay. Listen, well then let's head into last calls. The point of the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beverage related or not. The only rules are it's unopposed, unobjected, uninterrupted. Let's start with Tim.
Yeah, I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I am really just looking forward to the next chapter of my life. I have talked a lot about my mental health struggles, which are still ongoing. But I think at times we've talked about mental health in the brewing industry, and then it just kind of disappears for a while. I wish the brewing industry continued to talk about it. I feel like that was a topic du jour like 4 years ago. Oh, you gotta watch out for the mental health. You gotta watch out for the mental health. And then, nothing changed. I don't know any breweries that radically changed how they do business that improved the situation for employees. The pandemic did absolutely no help for that. And so it's not like people were like after the pandemic ended and people got back to running that suddenly there were radical changes in work-life balance that made it better, radical changes in employment or in pay that made it better. You're still back to those same things. And again, that's not to trash the industry that's going through some challenges, as we talked about last episode. But I wish some brewers felt there was a better path out of the industry. I think there are a lot of marketable skills that people in the brewing industry have that get overlooked because they feel like it's not applicable. I wish there was a service specifically for job searching out of the industry for brewers. Like there are experts that teach you how to write a resume to actually explain what you really did. To teach you how to talk about the project management or the technical skills. There are a lot of things where, I didn't have a degree in HVAC or plumbing or like I did everything from fix an air compressor to replumb both gas and water lines to welding, like all of these skills that are out there that I think there isn't necessarily certification. And sometimes, especially now that AI is getting involved in the job search, I don't know if you guys know that like just about every application asks you if you want to opt in or opt out of having an AI review your resume. Because they're looking for keywords. They're not really looking for the things that really tell the story of who you are. And I guess I'm very grateful that I have the connection that I have and the past before I got into brewing that I have. And even for me, it was a struggle to convince some people. I don't even know where I'm going with this necessarily. Just say that, hey, if you are someone who's been in the brewing industry that's looking to get out or wants to know what else is out there, give me a buzz. You can find me on like no social media, but you can contact the podcast and we'll figure out because
if you want, I can make you a United We Drink email address.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I would love to be able to help people with this. And again, this is not the trash of the brewing industry. I just know how much harder it is for people coming out of this industry. And I don't have all the answers, but I want to help people to figure out what the next stage of their life is. So, yeah, let's figure out something like that.
I know this is not supposed to be a time to put it. I'll make you a tim@unitedwedrink.com email address.
I love it.
Work for you?
I think that is great. And I really encourage people to reach out, if nothing else, to commiserate. I'm not trying to.
I think you should make that email address much more complicated. I think there should be some apostrophes.
Of 10,000 lakes at unitedwedrink.com. Got it.
When I was at Best Buy, I was like the 5th Tim Johnson, and normally what they would do is they would do like Tim, like my friend Dan Miller was the second Dan Miller, and he got Dan 2. Miller. They didn't give me Tim 2. Miller or Timothy 2. or Tim 2. Johnson and Timothy 2. Johnson. They used my middle initial, which is S. So I was Timothy's Johnson that you were emailing. So you weren't even emailing me. You were just emailing my junk, apparently.
I think you should be TJ Maltomeal at UnitedWeDrink.com. Tim 2 Sheds Johnson at UnitedWeDrink.com. That's just for my dad.
Nice. I like it.
I'll hop in here next. So, uh, by the time this comes out, I'm coming up on a little bit less than about 2 months out from 1 year from when my brother passed away, and um, it's kind of crazy to think that it has been that long, and also that it has only been that long because time is a weird thing to a father of twin toddlers right now. And a while back, I went through a lot of stuff with my mom, my wife, and found some stuff that I wanted to grab hold of, and stuff that I grabbed, but I knew that I had no intentions on having it. And slowly, I've been over the last couple weeks been selling off some of the stuff that I absolutely had no need for. I sold his Switch, his Nintendo Switch that he had to someone at my brewery who was I overheard saying that she wanted to get a Switch for her daughter, and I was like, "Hey, I have one. I just need to factory reset it. Do you want it?" And that, but other stuff I just threw on Facebook Marketplace, and this is where my last call really comes in. That place is a fucking cesspool of just the worst people in the world. No one reads descriptions. They look at pictures, and then and part of this is at the fault of Meta, the parent company of Facebook, that just put where you want to message someone about an item, they pre-fill it in with, "Is this available?" So people just click that and send it. So you just get messages that say, "Is this available?" Well, I put in all of my post that I go, "If you just send, 'Is this available?' I will ignore you." Because yes, if the post is up, it is available. Talk to me like I'm a human being. Talk to me like you are a human being and not just some robot on the other end of the conversation that you somehow want to purchase something from. Um, it I am glad that I am almost done with the I have put 4 items up on there, and I have 1 left. Uh, it really makes me sad about humanity that this is what people do, is that they don't even read descriptions and just will do the thing that you tell them not to do. Might be some trolling, but I look at these profiles, they're not trolls. They definitely are not fucking trolls. They're just idiots. And I should have just put them on Craigslist. Kevin?
Is Craigslist still a thing?
Yeah, I did. I bought that film camera that I talked
Oh,
about
yeah.
a few weeks ago off of Craigslist. That was a great experience. It was super fucking easy.
Well, Mike, I'm glad that your last call took a little bit of a turn towards the absurd and silly about the Facebook Marketplace, because my last call is not serious. No one cares about this, but it's my experience at Disney. I went for 3 days, and I love theme parks. It's where I wanna be. It's the only place I wanna be in my life, is at a theme park. I love riding roller coasters. I'm a fanatic. I love planning a day and being like, "Oh, we go here, and then we go here," and this is the way it's strategic. It's almost, military precision of where to go, when to go, especially at Disney, because you have to get up at 7 a.m. and you have to plan your first ride through Genie Plus. Anyone who does it or has done it knows what I'm talking about. It's stupid. It's ridiculous, but I kind of love it because I like the idea of being the cruise director and making things happen. Like, no, 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 we have to go to this place next, because if we don't do this next, we're never going to do it because we're not going to get the opportunity. This is the best time to do it. And then we move on to something else, and we have to be strategic in our rides. That is all to say, I've been to Disney before, and it was before the Tron roller coaster opened at Magic Kingdom, which is the light cycle run. And I love roller coasters. They're my favorite thing. And I was so happy that Tron was open. And I was going to get to ride this brand new roller coaster because the last new roller coaster that I rode at a Disney park was the Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster, which is top 3 for me all time. It spins, it has everything about that roller coaster is just joy. It's fast, it spins, it has screens everywhere, great music. It's just a sensory overload of joy and happiness. And I was like, oh, this is the next roller coaster they built after this. This is going to be amazing. And it was basically a very fast launch and nothing else. It's like 58 seconds long. It's just a really fast, awesome launch. By the way, awesome launch. And then just meh, kind of boring. I don't ever have to do it again. It's a virtual queue that you have to like book in the morning immediately, or else you're not going to get a chance to ride it. And I was just I was very disappointed, Disney. I know that a lot of the executives listen to our podcast because, of course, they do. They're big into craft beer and craft beer culture. I mean, they do the Food and Wine Expo anyway, but no, it wasn't great. And the reviews that I read about the roller coaster were correct. Kind of waste of time. And there's a lot more you could do with that land than have a pedestrian fast launch roller coaster. So boo to that ride. And there are there I said it. Take that, Disney. Now you've been taken down a peg.
Completely unrelated. I just want to say, Bob, I'll see you in Orlando for caviar this weekend.
That's a Bob Iger joke for anyone who doesn't know what that is.
I get ragged on for explaining the joke.
It's okay if you make it. Look, I was looking at Tim's face, and Tim did not know what was going on, and I was just informing him as a friend that he was making a Bob Iger joke, and that's what friends do, Mike.
Well, and it really helped because now I understand.
Yeah, and yes, everything is coming through clearly now, right? The rain has gone.
Oh God.
You want to plug anything, Kevin?
No, I've done enough.
Tim?
No, I don't think so. Oh, no, actually, I do have something I want to plug, and it's the TV show Loudermilk. I don't know if either of you have watched that.
I don't remember if you brought it up in the last episode or if it was after we talked about it. Or
Okay.
after we ended the episode, because we definitely talked about it.
Yeah.
During or after recording last time. But
well, then still I want to do it. Ron Livingston, I think is brilliant. I think the writing is pretty sharp, and it also really gets into some really good understanding of depression. Brian Regan broke me at one point, so it's not often that Brian Regan makes me cry. So go watch that if you want to cry and feel worse about yourself.
That's actually the second time something related to Brian Regan has been brought up in this episode. But follow me at Mike Loves Beer. That's all.
Oh yeah, email me at Tim at United We Drink, I guess. Eventually.
By the time this comes out, I'll be a week away from getting you that email address. I have my notepad open right now, and it says land and Tim at UnitedWeDrink.com. I don't remember why I wrote land as the first part of that, but
just because I told you to buy land
tomorrow.
I told you to buy land.
I now remember why I wrote it. Well, that's for after we finish up recording. But
you were just reminding yourself to buy land.
Tell you guys, it's not really land so much as a bridge, and it's around Brooklyn.
I love the idea that Mike is just sitting there recording like good financial advice during our podcast, and he was like, land, you say? I did not realize this was a good investment. I'll put this down on a sticky note, and I'll put it on my refrigerator and discuss it with the missus. I don't know why I did
put
that.
One exclamation point and 3 underlines. If you want to follow the show, we're at United We Drink on Twitter, at United We Drink Pod on Instagram and Threads. You can subscribe to the show on all the major podcast apps, and we also have our website, unitedwedrink.com, where you can also go to the Brands We Love page and check out some awesome companies over there, like Made in Cookware and Trade Coffee, and now Sticker Mule, who are one of my favorite sticker companies. I get personalized, like I personally buy stickers that I want made from them, and also I use them at the company as well. If you want to buy a shirt, sticker, button, tote, something like that, you can check out our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store, to do that. Otherwise, we will be back in a couple weeks with another new episode. Thank you, everyone, once again for joining us, and cheers.
Cheers.